Resident Evil, the brand new Netflix show that is also based on the very popular video game franchise of the same name. And of course, there has been a number of live action adaptations of this franchise. Of course, you got the 6 movies with Milla Jovovich, and last year there was the adaptation of the first 2 video games into one movie known as Welcome to Raccoon City, where it is basically pick a movie, pick a game. Which game are you adapting? Are we going to be in a mansion for most of the time that has like a weird underground lair from the first game? Or are we going to be at a police station in the middle of the city that has oddly enough, has a train station underneath? Are we going to have that? And it has a weird architecture. It's Raccoon City. Weird, and I'm wondering who's that architect. That's all I'm saying. But of course, when this show got announced, you're like, okay, they're going to make a Resident Evil show. I can kind of understand. Maybe like it's Walking Dead, but in a city, and like it's going to be like a Walking Dead thing with Resident Evil characters, more likely it's going to be. And then the trailer dropped, and you can't help but go, what is this? This is not what I'm thinking when I think Resident Evil. You got me intrigued, dear Netflix. I'm wondering, what are you going to do? So I sat down. I actually thought it was like on Friday it drops, but it turned out it premiered on Thursday. So I watched all 8 episodes, and what I will say here, for people who are fans of the games, is this is kind of like how HBO did Watchmen, where the events of the games have happened, but it's telling its own story, dealing with Elva Wester and these brand new characters like Jade and Billy, who are the daughters of Elva Wester. So I want to hold that there because, I think this is going to revive fans. I think most fans are not going to like it because it's too different. It's too different from the source material. Because I will say this, if people are ranting about Halo, Jesus, this show is going to be completely off record. Like, it going a whole different direction. Because it kind of treating it as like, this is not a sequel, this is not a continuation, it's like the events of the games have happened. It's just we're they're doing their own story with it. And also that it is a action-driven show with a tad of horror. So if you're a big fan of Resident Evil, but you're like, the horror, the stereo, the better, that's what you want. You want Resident Evil to be a horror franchise, not an action franchise. That isn't the show here. This is an action-driven show. And the thing is, like, I'm watching the episode, and my experience with Resident Evil outside the movies has been me playing Resident Evil 3. The remake of it. So my knowledge and my experience with these characters and my experience with Resident Evil world is very limited. And of course, like when Resident Evil 8 came out, when Village came around, I was obsessed with Lady Dimitrescu like everyone else was. But my knowledge and my experience with playing the games is very, very limited. So keep that in mind. But here's the thing. I had a kick with the show. I actually quite like it. I actually do want to see a season 2 of this show. And you can tell that you're invested is when you realize that you're on the last episode and it doesn't feel like you've been sitting on your ass for 8 hours. It doesn't feel like that. So clearly I felt the story to be at least engaging. Like, it is not the best. Is it the best show ever? No, it's not. I mean, let's be honest, it's Resident Evil. Resident Evil is a franchise that doesn't really have much on story. Just gotta put it up there, right? So them trying to dive into a little bit more, have these characters have a little bit more nuance, have these characters have a little bit more wits and dialogue, and while having all the stuff that makes Resident Evil, like, the villains are goofy in the show. The villains are goofy. Like, the show is set, like, we go back and forward in 2 separate time periods. We're in 2022, a fictional 2022, and we are in a 2036. And we go back and forward between the two, which feels seamless. Well, not seamless, but it doesn't feel too whiplashy. It doesn't feel like I was able to follow along with what was happening between the two timelines, because that's a challenge. When you have two separate timelines or two separate time periods that the audience is going to get, it could easily be like really like, whoa, what's going on? Whoa, what's this? Whoa, what's that? Like, what is this kind of what's going on, and trying to remember what's happening in that particular story of that particular time period. But I found them both really appealing, and also sometimes you're like, I care about one more than the other, and I was caring more about the stuff that was happening in 2022 more than the stuff that was happening in 2036, but mainly because the 2036 stuff is where you have most of the action. That is the, hey, get the chainsaw ready, get the triple barrel, get the zombies getting chopped in half. Like, let's have all the action sequences. Let's have all that. But the 2022 stuff is where the real meat of the show is, and it's mostly about a father trying to protect his daughters, but his daughters, mainly one of them, is the thinking or believing they know what's best. Like, the whole thing of like, the dad is a moron, he doesn't care about us, or this is a bad situation and I know what to do. Mainly that's Jay, who our main character, and you got Billy, who's her sister. And as much as we see them bickering and how different they are, like, Billy is a very inverted person. She just does not want to piss anyone off. She wants everything to be smoothly. She doesn't want any confrontation at all. While Jay is like, if you piss me off, you're going to get some confrontation. If I think you're an asshole, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. Or I know what's best. Now, when it comes to the effects, the more human that the creature is, the less oppressive it is. Like, spoiler alert, Lisa shows up, who is a character from the first Resident Evil game. And her whole thing is, she is like a hunchback, very skinny, like she hasn't eaten like forever. And she has like multiple faces, like her skin is just multiple faces, right? And it's like faces on faces. But you can tell that someone just put a pillowcase over someone's head and say, yeah, there's multiple faces, while they were filming. And the zombies, they went for the fungus look because it's a virus, it's a T virus, so it makes sense it to be maybe there's like a bubble here and a bubble there and all that, versus just like the teeth half falling off, mental brain of what a zombie is. But here's the thing, zombies are cheap to do. You can have hordes of zombies, because when the big finale, even though there's a couple of things I was like, oh, I would cut that part out, that's a little bit repetitive, but you can have like a scene with like billions of zombies because they're cheap to do. Is this show the best witching show on TV? No, not by a 10-foot pole it is. Sometimes the characters act too dramatic. Mainly in 2022, Jay is like chucking things and doing the whole fuck you and just chucking everything onto the floor that just becomes very like too dynamic, too over the top, to the point I can't buy the scene. The dialogue sometimes is very generic dialogue, where like clearly the actors only need to say like 5-word sentences each time they speak. And sometimes they need to add occasionally an F-bomb in there to show how adult we are, even though I'm like, you're dealing with zombies and there's blood and all that. So it's not the world best written dialogue, but I like it. And I think what it is sometimes, I think with these video game shows, mainly, because we got Last of Us around the corner, Netflix is going to do an Assassin's Creed show, there's going to be a number. I think TV is the way to go for video games, showing with Halo and Arcane, Halo, and now with Resident Evil. I feel like we are at the X-Men, Spider-Man phase of the video game genre, pairing it to the comic book genre, to the superhero genre. I feel like we're at the phase where, like, hey, just make good shows. If it's just make a good show based on this material. If it's very different, so be it. If it's very close, so be it. Just make a good show. I think what we have to be is be at that phase, at that point, versus whoa, 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 whoa. That's not Nathan Drake. Nathan Drake's meant to be like in his 30s, not in his 20s. Yeah, that whole thing. Or that's not the Master. He took his helmet off. He's meant to stay his helmet on the whole time. And to be honest, the general public who's going to watch the show will not give two shits what happens in the games. You know, if they know about the volcano, they reference the fucking volcano. I haven't played Resident Evil 5, and I'm like, yeah, I picture something about someone dying in, or how a battle in a volcano is very Resident Evil-y. I'm not that shocked. But I like it. I'll watch the season 2. There's little things they should have fixed, villains and just better switch, maybe a little bit more, you know, punch up with the writing. But yeah, I think this show will be greenlit for season 2. I think there'll be enough people watching it for at least for a second season. And you know, now Netflix is going to add some commercials into it between episodes or between movies. It's I think it's going to you know, they can keep this budget going or know how much people are watching it. So I'm on board. I am on board.